John chapter 15, if you have a Bible this morning. And if you do not and would like to follow along, there are Bibles underneath the seats in front of you and technically underneath you, but they'll be hard to reach if you're looking underneath you. It angles backwards, so you'll look funny. And your arms will not be long enough, trust me. John chapter 15 is where we will eventually be. We've got a baptism this morning, so I have to be a little less long. I'll always be long. That's just the plight of the preacher, but hopefully less long. We've got 6, maybe 7 getting baptized this morning, and a few of them are going to brave the waters and give a testimony. That is something I always offer everyone to do, and almost no one takes me up on that offer. Something about public speaking and stage fright, I guess, but so we'll want to leave some quality time for that. Memorial Day weekend in America has become a part of our culture. It's just a way of life for us. It's now just a date on the calendar that most of us, and I certainly am not saying this in any means to be critical about any of us or even our country, but it has become a way of life rather than a special day. It's become part of the calendar and not necessarily what it was originally designed to be. It was originally known as Decoration Day, and it was born in the years following the Civil War. Of course, our country went through horrific days during that war, and so much of our nation was torn apart, and families were torn apart, and there was just a lot of carnage, a lot of death. I can't even imagine what it would be like to live during that time, and nor can you, by the way. We just have lived in an America that conflict, while we have seen our fair share of conflict, it is usually measured by dozens of lives lost, not hundreds of thousands of lives lost. So it's just that foreign to us. So it was born out of that time, and I think early on it was probably appreciated more given how close to home it was for families. Probably everybody knew somebody who had been lost in that war, and as time went on, it shaped the fabric of our society. Eventually, it would become a national holiday. In 1971, it would be called Memorial Day. We are supposed to, on Memorial Day, stop and reflect upon those men and women who gave their lives to our nation. That's what we're supposed to do. But most of us, and again, this is more observation than it is criticism, but most of us, we see Memorial Day as a day off of work. And that is how most national holidays have become, mind you, including Christmas, including Thanksgiving. They become about the tradition of families getting together, and they become about getting a day off of work, and we think, what can we do during that day off? It becomes about picnics. It becomes about hot dogs and hamburgers. It becomes about getting together with family, all of which is fine and dandy. But we, over time, especially the further we get from the original intent of something, we miss out on what the original intention was for these national holidays. And Memorial Day is, I think, very, very much the case. I'd like to turn the clock back this morning. I'd like to draw attention to lives lost. In particular, lives laid down. Now, I don't want to draw your attention just to loss of life. Lives are lost every day, sadly, tragically. That's not something we should be callous about. For whatever reason, those lives are lost. But every day in our country, cancer takes people from us. Every day in our country, criminals take people from us. Every day in our country, car accidents take loved ones from us, and those lives matter, and the things that take those lives are relevant. But today, I want to focus on the lives that are voluntarily laid down for you and for me. Some in the past, many in the past, but even to this day, lives are being laid down, and I want to explain that throughout Scripture. We'll look at 3 groups of people who have laid their lives down for us, but I want to start in verse 13 of John 15, a familiar passage, a familiar statement that Jesus makes. He is speaking to his disciples about loving each other, and he makes the following statement in verse 13. He says, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man laid down his life for his friends." And what Jesus is pointing out to these disciples is an observation that we should all soak in, and that is very simple. to lay your life down, to sacrifice your life for something, you have to first love that thing. To lay your life down, to willingly give your life for a person, you have to love that person. Love is the motivation. It's the source behind that greatest act of self-sacrifice, of giving your all, giving your life. Love for people, love for ideology, love for country, that is behind the loss of life when it is voluntary, when it is willingly done. And so this morning, I'd like to draw your attention to the lives that have been laid down for our national security. I've heard different trains of thought, different positions within Christianity about the role the church should play in politics and in nationalism and patriotism. I know some people think the church shouldn't have anything to do with nationalism or patriotism because we are the church. We represent heaven, not a nation. We represent Jesus, not a president. And I've heard that some people think there should be a separation of church and state within the church. That we shouldn't be too involved with our country, that we shouldn't get too excited about our nation. I've even heard some Christians proudly beat the drum of walking away from America and not praying for it anymore because it's godless, and not giving it our votes because it doesn't matter anymore, and we should distance ourselves from the coming judgment of God. I've heard those things. And then I've heard plenty of Christians who immerse themselves entirely into our nation. They bleed red, white, and blue. They go to rallies and they beat the drum of freedom, and they spend all of their time promoting America and defending America and trying to bring America to a place of greatness. But today is not a day to debate those trains of thought. But let me first say this. Our citizenship is Christian before it is American. Our capital is New Jerusalem before it is Washington. Our leader is Jesus Christ before it is the President of the United States. And our authority is the Holy Bible before it is the U.S. Constitution. That all being said, I'm proud to be an American. That all being said, and indeed we should place our priorities emotionally in our heart properly, that all being said, we would be a thoughtless people. We would be thoughtless Christians if we didn't stop and ponder the American lives lost on our behalf. We would be a thankless Christian if we didn't stop and appreciate the American lives lost on our behalf, and we would be a heartless Christian people if at least on one day of the year we didn't stop and reflect upon all the moms and dads who got those letters. We would be cold, we would be heartless if we didn't stop and think about all the husbands and wives and sons and daughters who saw the military approach their home with news that their loved one is never coming home. To fight a war away across the seas that seem to have nothing to do with America. We as Christians are to be loving people. We are to be full of love. We're to be full of consideration. We're to be full of courteousness. And the people in our nation's history and today who have to endure life without their loved one because they gave it on behalf of our freedom, they deserve our reflection. They deserve our thoughts this morning. They deserve our honor. They deserve our gratitude. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Over 1.3 million Americans have laid down their lives for America. 1.3 million people. For you and for me. No, they may not have known us. They may not have thought of us. They may not have admired or loved us at all, having never met us. But they loved what we stand for. They love what this nation is. They love what we are as a people. They love what we do as a nation. And so they gave their lives for our country that you and I today benefit from. Within the politics of our world, I understand that every conflict we've been involved in can be closely documented and criticized. And I realize there are people who get paid, who make money for a living criticizing our country and finding fault with it. I understand that, and you can find lots of it. And I realize there are conflicts we've been involved in that didn't seem to match what we said we were going in there for. But I think at the heart of every conflict our people have died in, we are at the center of that conflict. I don't believe our leaders when they tell you we are going into conflict for some noble purpose. I understand that they are self-serving, just like you and I are. We enter conflict for our own benefit. They'll never tell you that, but we all do that. We get involved with things that we know will benefit us, either from a national security standpoint or an economic security standpoint. And we as Americans can sit back and judge that all day long, but at the heart of those wars is the benefit of America. And I, for one, am glad that men and women have fought for my benefit and for the benefit of my children and for the benefit of this nation's position in the world. A lot of people have intentionally avoided fighting. A lot of people over the years have worked hard at avoiding battle. And I will not cast stones at them, for I have not been in battle, nor have I been in the military. But 1.3 million people did not avoid battle. Some were drafted, some enlisted, some felt the pressure of their family to go, some felt that they had to fight, but they didn't leave the battle, but they didn't forsake this country. They didn't flee to other borders to avoid getting into war. And those 1.3 million souls who gave their lives for this nation, they deserve our appreciation. They deserve our thoughts this morning. Lives like Nathan Hale. Nathan Hale in 1776 joined George Washington's army when George Washington looked for people who would go into Britain and be spies. And when he was caught, he was hanged. And he left us with the statement. He said, "The only regret I have is that I only have one life to lose for my country." Those are people that go way back at the heart of our nation, that were willing to give up their lives so that you and I could continue to wave a flag proudly behind our buildings or out front of our church buildings and worship freely this morning. People like Marine Corporal Jason Dunham, who in 2004 in Iraq was with his men and a grenade came falling in front of him. And I've always been amazed at the selfless actions of our men and women in uniform. When he decided, without even thinking, to take his helmet, put it on the grenade, and throw his body on the grenade, knowing he would die, but protecting his fellow soldiers. We watch movies and we applaud it, but we don't realize the wife, the daughter, the mother, the father, the brother, the sister, the best buddy from high school, and all the good friends serving with him. We don't appreciate the loss they endure. And today, they deserve that. Tomorrow, they deserve that. You know, it has been 132 years since any battle has been fought on American soil. We should, this time in our country's history, for our generations, we should stop and we should look across the world and we should see what's happening in Ukraine, and we should not be so callous. We should not be so cocky. We should not be so arrogant to assume that could never happen to us. It hasn't happened to us because, number one, God has been good to us, and number two, there have been men and women who have volunteered their lives to make sure it doesn't happen to us. I love the fact that I can go home today after church and I can do what I want on my property. And I can drive from here to there and I don't have to avoid anything. My concerns today are the same as that you have. What am I going to eat when I get home? My concerns today, the biggest dilemma that you and I have today is, man, do I fill up my tank of gas? Because this economy is out of control. Or do I go on vacation? Think about it. Nobody here today is asking how they're going to get their next meal because the enemy is just a few miles away. Nobody in here today is fearing driving from point A to point B because of missile bombs or roads being destroyed. 1.3 million lives are part of the cost of enjoying what we have today. I wonder what would life in America be like today without the 655,000 lives lost during the Civil War. I wonder what life in America would be like today without the 399 lives lost during World War II. I wonder what would America be like today without the over 116,000 lives lost during World War I. What would life in America be like today without the 25,000 lives lost during the Revolutionary War? What flags would be flying in our land today without that war? I wonder what life would be like in America today without the 7,057 lives lost during the War on Terror. Here's a staggering figure for you. Over 30,000 lives have been lost in our military during the War on Terror to suicide. These people deserve our honor today. Take your Bibles, turn to John chapter 10. This pastor will let no opportunity go untapped. If we're going to talk about lives lost, if we're going to remember lives laid down voluntarily, if we're going to reflect and ponder this weekend on lives lost to bring us national security, then we better reflect on the life singular laid down, the life singular lost to bring us eternal security. John 10, verse 15, as the Father knoweth me, even so now I know the Father, and I laid down my life for the sheep. Verse 16, and other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Therefore doth my Father love me, because I laid down my life that I might take it again. No man taketh it from me. I'm not going to be martyred. I'm not going to be killed. I'm not going to be murdered, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This day, this weekend, we should remember the lives laid down for our national security, but we should also, and perhaps even more so, remember and appreciate and honor and be grateful for the life laid down for our eternal security. I think our national security matters. It should matter to us. We don't appreciate it because we've always had it, but the moment tanks come rolling into our backyard, it will matter. I love the fact that I can sit in my backyard and have a campfire and not worry about bullets, not worry about bombs. I love the fact that I can go to the store and not worry about foreign soldiers on our land. I love the fact that I can do what I want, where I want, how I want it in our country because we're not at war. And I'm grateful for a military that brings us that national security, but I really, really appreciate my eternal security. I woke up this morning and my mind gets racing at 1,000,000 miles per hour, and I've got this to do and that to do, and what if I do that? And I better not forget that. And I live in fear of forgetting things. I live in fear of not getting something done. I live in fear of making a mistake. I live in fear of all kinds of problems. But one thing I never wake up fearing, and one thing I never worry about, is what's going to happen to me in the next life. Now, I never fear a flame of hell in the next life. I never fear God's wrath on me in the next life. I never wake up and say, if I die today, God may destroy me in the next life, or God may punish me in the next life, or God may cast me into hell in the next life. I never worry about that. Why? Because I am eternally secure. Why? Because Jesus Christ died on the cross. He willingly laid down his life. He willingly sacrificed himself so that I would not have to face the wrath of God. And I'm just tickled pink about that. Now, we talked about this incredible Marine, and there have been many soldiers who have thrown their helmet and their body on a grenade to help protect loved ones. But Jesus Christ, if I can, in the theme of military, tell you, did the same thing. You know where the grenade came from? From God. Do you know who the grenade was aiming for? Me. Preacher, what'd you do to get God so angry? Sin And you can just hang tight because I know you don't have a problem with sin, but this sinner does. And I've sinned, and I will sin, and I'm a sinner, and sin's a part of my life, and God hates sin, and God has to punish sin because He's holy. And so God in His wrath, He is going to punish me. He is going to separate Himself from me. And He throws a grenade. It's called the wrath of God at me and all of mankind who sins. And it was Jesus Christ who willingly, He wasn't forced to do it. Nobody pushed Him over. Nobody made Him do it. But He jumped on that grenade, and He took that blow so that I would never have to face the wrath of God again in my life. It's incredible. I still sin. But God's not going to punish me. You say, why not? Because He's out of grenades. Jesus took the punishment, the eternal punishment for my sin, and I'm forgiven. I've been saved. That's why we talk about in the Bible, you can be saved from your sin. That if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised Him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For whosoever calleth upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. I've been saved from the wrath of God. I've been saved from the punishment of my sin. I've been saved from the condemnation of my sin. Jesus Christ took that grenade. He gave His life. He laid it down for me so that I can be eternally, forever secure, so that whatever happens to me in this world, I know where I'm going to be. I'm going to be safe in the arms of Jesus because I've been forgiven. The wrath of God has no impact on me anymore. Doesn't matter if I stop going to church tomorrow. Doesn't matter if I stop being a faithful husband tomorrow. Doesn't matter if I stop trying tomorrow. It's been taken care of. I'm eternally secure because Jesus died once and for all to forgive me for all my sins. So as you have your hot dog tomorrow, as you have your hamburger tomorrow, as you have the unofficial start to summer, as you get things done on your lawn, as you do things, would you stop and reflect and ponder and appreciate the lives laid down for your freedoms in this country? And then keep going and reflect and ponder and appreciate the life laid down to give you eternal security, eternal salvation, eternal forgiveness, so that the worst thing that can happen to you from here on forth, if you're a believer, I don't know, another lost Super Bowl? I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen to you? Don't say death. Do not say death. Death only gets you into heaven. What's the worst thing that can happen to you? Temporary pain, temporary grief, temporary problems, temporary complications. Heaven awaits us beyond death, and there is nothing stopping that. Because Jesus laid His life down for us. We're not done. Turn to 1 John chapter 3. 1 John chapter 3, I want to point out one more group of people I want you to think about today and tomorrow and appreciate and honor and reflect upon. 1 John chapter 3, I'll read just one verse. 1 John chapter 3, verse number 16. 1 John 3:16, the Bible says these precious words, "Hereby perceive we the love of God because He laid down His life for us." What a blessing. And John says, "And we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren." Today we remember the lives laid down for our national security. We certainly remember the life laid down for our eternal security, but I think it's appropriate to remember and appreciate the lives laid down for our relational security. I don't think John is talking about people literally dying for each other, to step in front of some truck because they're about to get hit by it. I don't think that's at all what John is saying. John is talking about dying to self, laying down your relational life, laying down your emotional life, laying down your psychological life, laying down all those things within you and within me that says I'm at the center, that says I am the sun of the universe. I am the most important thing in the world. John is saying we ought to lay down our lives. We ought to give up our ambitions. We ought to give up our feelings. We ought to give up all those things that keep us from having good relationships with people. If someone's high maintenance, then deal with it. That's what John's saying. If someone's difficult, then put up with them. If someone's OCD, then enjoy it. You've got to lay down your life, your feelings, your opinions, your concerns, your problems, and love people despite that. You know, countless people do that in this world every day. They come to an altar somewhere in a church or a courthouse or at the beach, and they exchange these vows. And they have every intention of laying their life down for that other person. And not meaning to be the center of that relationship, but it happens all the time. And those vows are useless because divorce follows very soon. Countless parents, when they bring babies into the world, they look into the eyes of that child and they say, I'll give up anything for you. Until that child wants you to get up in the middle of the night. And then you're, why can't you just, sleep? We are very self-centered people. Have you noticed that? You wake up thinking about you, and you spend the rest of the day thinking about you, and you go to bed thinking about you. And we spend most of our lives trying to make me and myself and I happy. Amen? It is a rare thing when you meet somebody who is willing to lay their life down for you. I don't mean the grave. I mean living with you, but dying to self every day in order to love you. A lot of people want to do that. Peter said to Jesus at the end of Jesus' life, hey, I'm going to lay my life down for your sake. And Jesus says, you want to go with that? Are you going to do that? You're going to deny me in just a few moments. We have good intentions. I don't doubt that. All of us do. We want to. But when the moment comes and the flesh says no, we don't do what we say we're going to do. Paul talked about Priscilla and Aquila, and he commended them to the Roman church, saying that these precious people laid down their neck for me, for my sake. And we thank them, and the whole church thanks them, because that was rare when somebody can do that. I'm not sure if everyone in this room has somebody in their life who is laying down their life daily for them. I don't know if you do. But if you do, would you stop and appreciate the work that they are putting in to deny themselves so that you can have a secure relationship with them? If you're a secure person this morning, meaning you don't have issues that go back to your childhood, and you're not fighting problems that go back to your childhood, and you're not chasing affirmation that your father and mother never gave you, if you today have two good parents or one good parent that raised you and loved you unconditionally and denied themselves and helped you have a great life, if that's you, would you stop and realize you are so blessed today, because in a world of 7 billion people, so few children grow up with parents who will put themselves second to the good of their kids? Maybe your marriage is good today. Before you give yourself credit and pat yourself on the back, ask yourself, have I been blessed with a selfless spouse? If you have, let me tell you how rare they are. If you have a secure marriage, it's because somebody's laying down their life to love you. And that is not easy. Those people that have laid down their lives to give us security, secure friendships, secure relationships, ones that work, let's be thankful for them. If you have someone in your life who doesn't throw a fit when they don't get their way, if you have someone in your life who doesn't yell at you when they don't get what they want, if you have someone in your life who doesn't make you feel bad when they don't get their way, if you have someone in your life who doesn't have to always have it their way, then on this Memorial Day weekend, when we are acknowledging lives willingly and voluntarily laid down, let's remember those who give us their lives for our national security, the one who has laid down his life to give us our eternal security, and the people around us. And there may be just one in your life, there may be 2 or 3, but if they're in your life, would you just stop this morning and tomorrow and say, man, I have what I have today, politically, spiritually, and relationally, because of people that God has put in my life or have gone before me. And let's just do some reflection. Tomorrow should be more than just a day off. It was intended by our forefathers to get us to be thinking and grateful people. Let us not fall into the trap of doing at the expense of being. This is a weekend for us to think and say thank you for the blessings that we have in our life. Let's all stand and have a word of prayer.